Hola, hello. Yep, it's me again, Yvonne Emilia Elizondo. I'm here today to wish you all a very belated Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and wanted to jump into the astrology of the end of the year that we will not speak of. Yes, from Harry Potter, not mentioning the whole 2020 together. I know it's a bit childish, but we really are coming to the end of the year, and I wanted to share with you some astrological updates. Um, a lot of my clients and friends, and even my family, they're kind of wondering when the astrology is going to get better for for us. And I've kept saying we're going to have to hold on until the beginning of March. So yes, we want to make those changes stepping into 2021. We want to have that essence of it's getting better. We're just run over by the bus over and over and over again in 2020, right? And so it does get better, but it's going to take us a little bit of time to actually start to feel, the betterness of things, so to speak. So I want to show you here by sharing my screen, give you an idea of, what we're looking at. Okay. All right, and this is why this is important. So this is actually the chart for December 29th of this year. And I wanted to start off there because we do have a full moon going on almost at the end of the year in Cancer. Okay, so as we know, you Cancerians, or anybody who knows or loves a Cancerian, they can be rather moody, but they could also be super protective and, really want to be there to hunker down emotionally, right? Sometimes they want to run away from the emotions, and sometimes they overexpress the emotions. But Cancer is one of those really good moon placements, okay, because it's naturally at home. The moon is at home in Cancer right here. Now, this would be wonderful, and it would be absolutely great if it was just by itself. But here is where we start to really dig into the pickle of the first few months of 21. And this is why I say, although this moon would typically be an amazing moon, it really isn't meant to be. Sorry, I'm going to turn off my phone here. It's not as wonderful as it should be. And let me show you why. So we have Saturn and Jupiter, Saturn on top, Jupiter on the bottom. The great conjunction, they just went into Aquarius on the 21st. And so that's great, right? Because Aquarius energy is about the people, it's about social aspects, it's about communication, like viral communication, it's about technology, it's about progression, it's about moving forward. But it could also be considered a very detached type of energy. Saturn is at home, Saturn right here is at home in Capricorn, and it's at home in Aquarius. So essentially what Jupiter does this time around, instead of getting bogged down by all of the Capricorn energy that was going on in 20, right? Now it's moving into Aquarius with Saturn, and Jupiter will be in Aquarius for 1 year. Saturn will be in Aquarius for 3 years exactly, almost a little bit over a month, 3 years, okay? Jupiter does much better in Aquarius. It supports in a more positive air, mental thinking, communication, right? Way of doing things. And it supports Saturn in this way. Although Saturn can still be considered a malefic, it brings more challenges, it brings, delays, it brings really long-lasting things into perspective or into manifestation. So just because it's considered a malefic doesn't mean that it's not able to do some really good positive things, especially in Aquarius. Now, I'm not trying to hype it up, the positive stuff, because it's still not all that great astrologically, but it does give us a shift from Earth Capricorn, what we have to do, hierarchy, government, financial issues, with Pluto in the mix. That makes everything Pluto, the Lord of the underworld. Like, if you have a title like that, do you think you're going to be a positive dude? No. So Pluto came into Capricorn and just broke everything down. But now what we see is that with the transition of Saturn, the great conjunction, and Jupiter, the great conjunction together in Aquarius, we may start to see some, some different types of challenges, right? Where it's not necessarily so much government aspect, but it's more about social reform, the people, how we move forward after, especially in the US after this election. We've been through some stuff, regardless of what side you're on. We've been through some stuff. And so the next 3 years are really about, okay, where do we go from here? How do we rebuild? How do we reestablish? How do we reconnect, in that sense? So that's the really great part about, Saturn in Aquarius, along with Jupiter. But here's where I say we're not really free of a lot of the challenges. It's not the challenges so much, it's the consequences of what happened in 2020. Okay. It literally is like we got run over by the bus, and now how do we get medical treatment, or we end up in the hospital, or we have broken bones. Okay. So now it's the fixing up part. Okay. So the fixing up part is, at most of the time, can be just as challenging as the breaking down part. But here's where it gets tricky. Okay. Saturn and Jupiter connect in this red line. Okay, red line is, again, like martial arting. They're not communicating very well. It's abrasiveness between the two, to Uranus retrograde in Taurus. Okay, all right. So Uranus really represents sudden change, drastic change, just a movement of, it's not like slow like Pluto, where Pluto breaks things down so slowly. Okay, it's been in Capricorn forever, and it has a few more years. Uranus is more of that energy that's like sudden, you don't expect it coming, there's no planning for it, it just kind of happens. And whatever the result of it is, could be either positive or it could be more challenging, okay? But because it's connecting to Saturn specifically, okay, it's squaring, that's what we call it, it's a square. To Saturn, we are expecting that Uranus and Saturn are going to be duking it out, literally, right? Saturn is that essence of like digging in deep, it's immovable, and we have Uranus that's like completely shakeable and sudden, shifts. So you have these two opposing energies that we're going to be dealing with for the majority of the first quarter of 2021. Okay, now let me continue. I'm going to share my screen again, and let me just give you an idea of what it looks like after the full moon. Okay, so here we go. So now we have the full moon, right, on the 29th. So let's move down to, and this is a PDF file I send out to some of my clients. So just to give them an idea. But anyhow, here's where we want to look at the end of the year. So this is New Year's Eve, literally. And so we have Saturn and Jupiter, right? Saturn is about constriction, Jupiter is about expansion. So we automatically have this like, how are we going to do this? Do we make the constriction bigger? Yeah, that's probably what it's going to look like, because Jupiter is not at home in Aquarius, Saturn is. And so these two great malefic Saturn and benefic Jupiter are literally like, it's not a tug of war, but it's kind of like, okay, who's supporting who in this game? And because Saturn is at home and Jupiter is the guest in the home, Jupiter kind of has to do what Saturn says. So that's why this is going to get tricky. All right, so on New Year's Eve, we see that there's an opposition. This is the an opposition to the full moon, right, as it's moving into the new year. Well, the full moon just happened, I'm sorry, but it's actually it's an opposition. It's not a full moon, because then it would have been here with the sun. We just got over the full moon. We're actually having a Saturn Jupiter opposition. And so on New Year's Eve, that's what a wonderful, slightly sarcastic way of jumping into 2021, right? And we're literally leaving 2020 with like a oomph, right? So the moon comes in, and the moon really steps in and says, okay, I'm going to activate more of that Saturn Jupiter energy, right? And so that's where it can get a little tricky, okay? But anyhow, let's move on to the next part of this, right? So we are literally leaving 2020 with, oh, I said it. How did I say it? Oh my God. Okay, I feel like I just called out Voldemort's name or something. Anyways, all right, so how do we leave 2020? Okay, with a bang. All right, now here is where I say that we're really not quite over the challenges, as I mentioned earlier. So what we start to see here, this is January 6th in the United States. This is where the US presidential election officially gets certified by Congress, where they count the electoral votes. Well, you see all of this red going on? That's challenging, not gonna lie, okay? Now, I've had some comments and some feedback, and a lot of astrologers have. Those of us that tend to be more traditional based and maybe not so pop astrology or new age based, traditional really looks at the bad stuff and not just the good stuff. And no offense to pop astrologers or those that want to keep things light. By all means, that's your service to everybody. But my service to my clients and to you all is really to be as realistic as I possibly can. Right? There is an ethic to my astrology that says, yeah, if it looks bad and it looks poopy, I got to tell you, well, this is much better than 2-0, but we're still in quite a bit of a challenge in what's going on, right? So we have, again, Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, and all of these red lines. Now they're making an aspect to not only Uranus, but to Mars. Mars moves into Taurus on the 6th on this day, and it also creates an opposition to, here we go, the moon. So now the moon and Mars, there may be some agitation, some really conflict type of energy. I mean, especially political, we're anticipating, I hope not, but it kind of looks like that's the intentionality of this, right? So again, in Taurus is about home. It's about the value system. It's about the food industry, also represents the food industry. So it has a lot to do with what we value, not just monetarily, but what we value in our sense of comfort, and our political affiliations, our religious affiliations, our educational paradigms, our philosophy, all of that is comfort, right? So a lot of that has to do with, okay, how are we looking at how we need to be comfortable, either individually, as a family, as a community, or even as a nation, and even globally. So here is where it starts to get, fired up. These dark lines mean that the energies are really starting to move towards each other, and they're starting to create, friction with Mars and Uranus. Mars is the god of war. Yes. Okay. In Taurus, it's an inert sign, so it's a little bit more grounded, but it's still the god of war. And Uranus is, sudden change, like it just comes in and so you're like, well, what the heck just happened, right? And in Taurus, it has a lot to do with that value system or the finances. Now we're also looking at potential food disruptions, food industry disruptions along with that. Okay, but I don't want to get too much into that. I'll do that as we move on to the next year. But here, I'm going to share my screen one more time and really close this off so we have a really good understanding of where we're at. All right, so that's the 6th. Here we go into the 13th. Once again, you see that we have a lot of this. The moon comes in and joins Mercury, Saturn, and Jupiter. And the moon, again, is those emotions. It's an activator of all of the planets. Mercury is the mind and thinking, and all of this is happening in Aquarius. And so look at all of these martial arting, energies that are going on. And here we start to see that Mars, the god of war, the god of action, the god of, agitation, inflammation, moves really close to Uranus, the sudden change. So this is, some pretty intense energy that we're going to be dealing with here at the beginning of 2021. All right, and then we move into, actually that worked out pretty well. Look at that. Okay, so now what we're doing here is, this is the actual inaugural election in the United States. Uranus and Mars are exactly connecting. So we can anticipate a lot of sudden oomph, okay, aggression, agitation, conflict, okay, and again, we have the sun coming in, and Saturn and Jupiter still in Aquarius, they're moving. So again, this is going to be about that sense of comfort, that sense of value, what we value, that sense of social connection, really starting to set things down for a long period of rebuilding. But this could also mean, a significant amount of conflict, especially with Mars and Uranus involved and the moon coming into that placement as well. So I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy again, but, we know how things stand in the US politically. And so the 2020, darn, I did it again. Somebody catch me. 2020, okay, is leaving us with a significant amount of division, and it shows up here on Inauguration Day. All right, if we move into the beginning of February, you still see that we still have, even though Jupiter is separating from Saturn here, we still have a lot of that connection with Uranus and with Mars. And so again, the energy just continues until, let me show you. I'm just going to go through these real quick, right? So you can get a sense of what we're looking for. Here we go again on the 2nd of February. Still, that energy is really working hard. And we get to the 17th, and the energy still, right there. Those planets are moving relatively slowly. They're still squaring each other. And then we get to the beginning of March, and here's where I say we start to feel some reprieve, because you can see now that really the only planets that are connecting in a martial arting kind of way in the square is Saturn and Uranus. And this really remains the energy of 2021. It's Saturn constriction and not being very flexible, and Uranus coming in and really shaking things up. Okay, so we're going to have those contradictory, opposing energies really for the remainder of 2021. Now, these two planets meet specifically. Let me pull up the dates because I had them on the 17th. Okay, is the first time that they actually come together. I talked about that. And then they come together again June 14th, and then once again on Christmas Eve, 2021. And there's the astrology. Okay, so this is what we're looking at for at least the first quarter. I will come back and do some more videos on, the moon and the different planetary changes, but ultimately this is the energy that we're going to be working with. And if you see here, we're now in June, and I wanted to give you another idea of how these two planets are going to come together once again, right? Here we go. So this never leaves 2021. It lingers. But anyways, we do start to see some really good energy towards the summer months, a lot more freedom, okay? And we move on into, the fall, and then we hit November. I'm not even going to go there right now, but anyhow, that's where we are energetically and astrologically. This is a rebuilding time. It really is. And how we rebuild is really up to us. We can rebuild with divisions, or we can rebuild with a sense of collective unification. Yes, that's very idealistic. I get what's going on in the world right now, but even on an individual level, we have to. I don't like to say have to, because that's an absolute, but we have to step up and really start trying to unify, ourselves and unify with others, and really try to do the best that we can to help Mother Earth along and help us as a civilization and just to humanity, just to get along better. But anyhow, if you're interested in your astrology or more of the astrology for next year, 2021, okay, feel free to reach out to me at spiritualessence.com. That's spiritual-essence.com. You can reach me here. Anyhow, however I can help. All right, y'all, thanks so much for listening. I hope this was informative. I know it's rather lengthy, but it is a new quarter that we're about to step into, and I wanted to give you a brief overview of what we're looking at. All right, stay safe, blessed be.